Vinea has been around for about 9 years, and the work I have been doing up until now for Vinea has been with individual organizations. I had on my agenda to do a study that I could share broadly that wasn't for any individual, but basically a study that we would do on our own. And it happened to be on Catholics and COVID during the pandemic, right? So how do Catholics cope? Where are they now? And so we just launched our first PR campaign. And the thing that's been surprising to me this past year is how much interest there is on the topic and what I have to say, especially given that, I'm not a known quantity, right? So I've been intentionally not putting myself out there because while I've been doing market research for over 25 years, what I didn't have experience with when I formed Vinea was doing market research for Catholic organizations. So I wanted to really just take on a small number of projects and get to know that process because it's really important to know it well and to do it well before again putting yourself out there, which is what I did finally with this COVID report. And it's been great. I've been I'm here. I interviewed with a few other people, Teresa Tamio, Gus Lloyd. I'm going to forget all the names, right? Katie McGrady, and that's just been a blessing for me to see that there's so much interest in the work that we have and produce, because really ultimately it's for the church that we do this, right? And so I'm finally able to get information out there for the church, and they're eating it up, which is incredibly rewarding and like a little surprising. I just didn't know what the uptake or interest in this would be.
That's fantastic. Well, welcome everyone. Today we're joined by Hans Plate. He is the founder and president of Vinea Research. Welcome, Hans. Good to have you with us.
Very happy to be here, Dominic.
So briefly, Hans he combines market research expertise with devout Catholic beliefs, and he leads a team to provide high caliber, action oriented market research to parishes, church leadership, apostolates, and advocacy groups. And he lives in Northeast Maryland with his wife and 5 daughters. So, Hans, good to chat with you. And actually, I want to hear more about, before this conversation, I'd not heard of your work, your research. And so it's exciting to learn a little more about you and share that, with the Smart Catholics community. So, friends, welcome to Smart Catholics Mastermind. We're all about meeting the minds and hearts of Catholic creators. They are devoting their time and talent to mastering their vocation, their journeys, so that normal people like you and I can live fuller lives faster and maybe get a little smarter. Hans, before we talk about Vinea and the research you put into Catholics and COVID, and what's your story? How did you get to where you are now?
So I'm a cradle Catholic, one of 2 children. I'm actually originally from Peru. You wouldn't know it from my name, but I was originally I was born in Peru, South America. Moved to the States when I was very young. My parents knew a little bit of English. Actually, I don't know if my mom knew any, and so I grew up speaking Spanish in the house. So we grew up with a very Peruvian household where faith was very important. We had the candles, we had the statues, we religiously went to mass and things of that nature. But around college, I guess, maybe even high school time, I sort of, stepped back from my faith and became lukewarm. I would still go to mass, but I was a lukewarm Catholic. I married my wife. She is a devout Catholic, and for the longest time, she would go to these different conferences and ask me if I was interested in going. Right, Franciscan for the most part, because we're about a
Okay.
5 hour drive from there. And I wouldn't go, right? So I would always say, no, it's okay. It's God and me. I have a good relationship with him. I don't need to go to a conference. I'm not into that kind of thing and whatever. Of course, now I regret it, right? All these pre-children years that, we could have been going to these conferences together. But so anyway, so at one point she dragged me to a Jeff Cavins Bible timeline seminar. And I don't know, it was something about the way he presented it, the problem of how difficult it is to be Catholic. He, have this pile of stuff, of information, habits, practices, saints, everything, but we don't know how to
Right.
access it when it's needed.
Mm-hmm.
And so I felt the Spirit move in me for the first time at that point, and that was about 17 years ago now. And then what was interesting is the first then application I had of that is like that didn't actually get me charged in my Catholic faith. That got me charged in wanting to know more about religion and Christianity, and
Mm-hmm.
in particular. And so I started exploring the different Christian denominations, ultimately felt like, Catholicism was the true church, and the one that Jesus founded, in the beginning. But the one moment I remember in particular is as I'm doing, having all these different struggles, like, do I go Christian or not, or just what do I do? The words of Peter came to me, which is, where will we go? You have the words of everlasting life, and that was the first time Scripture spoke to me in a moment
Wow.
of struggle and contemplation, and it just
Mhm.
set me on a path of just wanting to consume as much content as possible. So it was apologetics, it was the saints, it was anything I can get my hands on. Obviously, the seminar, the Bible timeline that Jeff does was great for me. It,
Mhm.
it really was very foundational for my formation, so that I could then take on this additional
Mhm.
information and stay grounded within Catholicism.
Yeah. I can resonate and agree with the power of that timeline because like 15 years, well, maybe 17 years ago now, I saw that too.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking the power of this thing because I don't get the story. And I'm like you, gifted to be a cradle Catholic, but I don't even know the story I'm living or that I'm part of and how it all applies. And it's all the same world and it's just extensions and, so amazing. How, totally random. I used to live in La Plata, Maryland.
Okay.
So it's kind of, it's funny how that happens.
Right.
Um, so did you found Vinea or did you work with co-founders and how did Vinea Research come about?
So, about a year after the Jeff Caven's intervention, um, I went to my pastor and I said, I'm discerning becoming a deacon. What do you suggest I do? And he said, okay, well, why don't you join the RCIA team and get involved in a couple of other groups? But the RCIA team is really the more pertinent thing. And so I joined the RCIA team. I gave a couple of talks, along the way. But then after Easter, we had a final talk where the person was talking about time, talent, and treasure. And time is easy to understand, right? Volunteering where you can. Treasure is easy to understand as well, which is giving your money, giving money to charitable organizations. But I was really thinking hard about the talent piece. It's like, what do I do from a talent perspective? And so, obviously, then I was hit over the head with the fact that what I do and had done up until that point, and continue to do with commercial organizations, is provide market research services, which is the way they refer to it is actually customer insights, right? So the idea is get to know the customer as well as you can, so that you can market a product to them, a service to them, or whatever. And the idea was, well, so we can kind of do that in the Catholic Church, because I heard Matthew Kelly's language was that, we are always marketing the church and we're the billboards, right? So like how
Mhm.
we act, what we
Yeah.
do, how we interact with people, that is basically advertising our faith in one way or another. And so it's really no different to say, look, the church, if we want to do a better job, and all the different apostolates and ministries that are out there, you need to get to understand, your flock better, right? Your constituency better, so that
Mhm.
then you can better message to them, communicate to them, and develop kinds of programs that they will find most helpful. And so that
Mhm.
started the path of forming Vinea, which I did on my own. I was with a small group at the time. I had three other partners, and I left that group because there was no way I could do both. And I formed two companies: one that does work in the commercial world, and then Vinea Research, which does work in the Catholic world. And
Mhm.
so, and even the way I found my first client was completely providential, and it involved our first babysitter from our oldest child. I
Okay.
reached out to her because she wrote for the local Catholic newspaper. I said, like, I have this company, a great idea. I don't know anyone in the Catholic world. Can you connect me with anyone? And she said, call this woman, Carolyn Savitsky is her name. She was in my wife's first Mommy and Me group, right? And she happened to work at this organization called Renegade Productions, and that's founded or owned by Tim Watkins, who was on the President's Advancement Council for the Fellowship of Catholic University Students. And it happened
Wow.
to be like the week I called, Tim Watkins was hosting Focus on his in his offices, which was like 40 minutes away from me, right? And so I dropped everything. I went over there. I didn't know who Focus was at the time, and it happened to be that they were interested in doing a major study called the Focus Effect, which is basically measuring the impact of focus on people's lives after they've graduated college. So, are they any different than the other population of Catholics, who are millennials, I guess, at the time? And so that led to my first project, which was just, again, like I said, providential, totally not a me thing, totally a God thing, and just the doors that have been opened without any of me, which is great because it just, not that I need really strong signals on this, but it's been so clear that it's not really what I'm doing, it's what the Lord is allowing to happen through me and through Vinea. So that's
Beautiful.
how
So you
that's the foundation of the company, and then it's just taken off from there.
okay? Amazing. Can you share an overview of your the impact of COVID on Catholics?
Sure. So
And
on that study, what we did is well, first of all, I have a friend who's a pastor who knows what I do, because it happened to be that when I first started working in the industry, he interned at that company, and we ran into each other years later. But anyway, he's a pastor, and he said, we don't have a lot of good information on the impact of COVID on Catholics and what
mm,
people intend to do going forward. And so that started the whole process of designing the survey and talking to other pastors and associate pastors about what kind of information would be helpful. And I think there are a lot of findings. I think two important findings are the following. The first is, I think the most important one is about the Mass and attendance in the Mass and how people view the Mass.
mhm,
Because obviously people couldn't view the Mass or couldn't attend Mass, and so a lot of them were viewing. And when you look specifically at those who prior to COVID went to Mass every weekend, right, at least weekly, if not more often, they're largely going to stay engaged 4 out of 4 weekends in a 4 month weekend, but not all. So like some of them have already started to like reduce the frequency of Mass attendance and observation. But the biggest thing
mhm,
is only 60% of people who used to go to Mass weekly are going to physically be present at Mass 4 out of 4 weekends in a month, projected out to like the summer of 2022. And so
mhm.
that's a pretty significant gap, I guess, that we have between what they expect that they'll be doing, which is based on what they're currently doing and where they think they're headed, and what they were doing before COVID, which is one disappointing finding. I think actually the more disappointing finding is we had another set of questions where we asked people, do you see yourself being physically present at Mass in the next 3 months? Yes or no. And if they said no, we gave them a list of reasons they could select to help us understand why that is. And I forget the number, I think about 40% selected only convenience and preference reasons. And by that I mean things like, I don't want to have to drive to church. It's more convenient for me to stay at home. I don't have to dress up. I don't have to
Mhm.
participate, right? I don't have to sit, kneel, and stand. I don't have to vocalize my prayers, right? This is among people that are self-identified Catholics that went to Mass, right? That they're
Mhm.
saying that, and so that's very disconcerting and just speaks to the, I don't know, maybe we're a little bit paying the price of not great catechesis on the Mass, what it is, why you need to be physically present, even if you're not taking communion, right? Obviously, there's a communal
Mhm.
aspect of it, or the Eucharistic aspect of it, but there's also the sacrificial aspect of it, of the Mass, and your participation in that sacrifice that they're just not getting. And so that's a major. Those are two like major points that
Yeah.
came out of the study that were a little concerning.
Yeah. I'm curious if there was a positive one that perhaps surprised you. Maybe not as large, but if there was something uplifting.
Yes, the extent to which they feel like their faith in God during COVID has improved. So 50% of the sample
Oh.
feel like even during COVID, their faith lives have improved. When you look specifically at the people who say their lives overall are worse today than they were before the pandemic, their faith in God has still grown, or at least stayed the same. But you get an equal
Mhm.
number who say stayed the same or has grown, and very few who said that their faith in God is less than it was before, which is again great, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I was surprised by that because I expected some correlation. I expected people that have been hit the hardest,
Mhm.
financially or just family issues or whatever, to maybe indicate that their faith in God is less than it was before. But that was not the case at all, which was again a very positive and surprising finding.
No kidding. Wow. So so the first part of what you do is the research as you've just outlined, but then you also come in and you help people or these advocacy groups and so on parse it and understand it and create action plans or strategies on how to start turning that around. Is that so? And what does that look like?
Yeah, no, exactly right. I mean, so we're strategically based. In other words, we have a strategic business mindset to everything we do. And in the commercial world, if you would have a report of these are the findings, and this is a summary of the findings, and ended there, you would not get repeat business because in our world, it's like, okay, so what does this mean? What are the implications, and what do we do with this? How do we improve? Now, in the commercial world, typically research leads to additional research, right? So you identify a problem, you work with them to come up with candidate solutions, and then you go and test the solutions in additional research, right? And so that's what that process is. It's a relationship, really, with the organization to understand, okay, well, what can you do differently going forward? Let's identify some of those things, and then let's go out and test them. A simple example that we've been doing with Vinea is doing pro-life messaging. So the first step is understanding at a very deep level where people are on the topic of abortion, for example, right? Once you understand them, then you can say, okay, well, let's try to develop videos that speak into their their background or their point of view on it, right? And ideally, of course, with the objective to change their mind. So you do the first research, which is to understand men or women, because we've done both. Then you develop stimuli that you can test with them, and then you do more research, saying, okay, look, take a look at this video. Does it speak to you? Does it address your concerns? Where is it lacking? How would you use it? What objections might you have? And then you kind of iterate a little bit to find the winning video, as it were, a couple of videos. So it's definitely got a strategic component. This isn't just Trivial Pursuit facts about Catholics. Some of those are kind of interesting, but we focus on things that are action oriented or decision based or strategic.
Sure. For those who are watching, if you're enjoying this video and learning more about the kind of stuff that Hans is up to, please hit that like button. It does help us reach more people, help more people hear about Hans, and learn about the message. Briefly, this show is brought to you by the Free Catholic Community on smartcatholics.com. We're free of trolls and ads and toxicity, faithful to the Holy Father, Pope Francis, and the Church, and we're committed to a culture of kindness and learning. If that sounds like you, come and check us out at smartcatholics.com. Hans, I'm curious, one, how could people, learn more about you, but kind of more importantly, is there a aspect to your site where the average Catholic can go check out your research? Is there information for the pew sitter to go and kind of self-educate and learn?
Yeah. So the bulk of the work we've done up until now has been for individual organizations, and they're the owners of that information. So you won't find that on my website. But this current COVID report is the first of many that we expect to do that anyone can download, right? So I'm making it available to everyone. Obviously, trying to get it out to pastors and priests that are out there just to better understand, the faithful. So on our website, vinearesearch.com, and Vinea is spelled Vinea. You can also sign up there. Actually, you can get the report on our homepage. You can also sign up on our mailing list, because a couple of things that we're going to be doing. One is obviously blog posts that go into different aspects of either research or findings from other studies. So there are some findings that I'm allowed to share that I'm going to start sharing little by little. And if you're interested in knowing about research, I have some blog posts on what is a messaging study, what is the difference between quantitative and qualitative research, things of that nature. But then if you're on the mailing list, you'll be able to get some of these reports and deep dives on this study and future studies that we expect to do.
Brilliant. So vinearesearch.com, and you encourage people to go and download this PDF, maybe print it off and give it to their pastor.
Exactly.
And start chatting about it at the local level.
Yep.
Fantastic.
Now, this is intended for everyone to use, as they see fit.
Wonderful. Well, it's been good to have you with us, Hans, and it's always too short a time, but in wrapping up, if you had 1 minute to share a message of encouragement maybe to other Catholics, what would you like to share with them?
So my main message is one of hope. So I didn't know anything about apostolates and the work that was going on in the church before I formed Vinea. And the more I get out there, the more I get to meet different organizations. And prior to then, all I consumed was news that was really depressing, right? Catholics are losing, so many faithful. Ex-Catholics are the largest denomination in the country. All these scandals, division within the church. But when you get my vantage point and get to meet different apostolates and organizations, and you see how faithful they are, how fervent they are in what they're doing, it's incredibly edifying, and it fills me with great hope. I tell everyone I meet, you have no idea what's going on on the ground. All these great people that are doing really good work for the Lord, and really have good ideas. And so it fills me with hope. I know there's a lot of negative stuff out there, but that's my message. Is there's really a lot of reasons to hope for the future of the church, despite everything else that we hear.